Let's go ahead and invite the D&I leader and LGBTQ rights activist to share the LGBTQ member standpoint. May we welcome Ankit Bhuptani onto the stage. A round of applause, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can I have my slides on, please? So since morning, I'm hearing conversations on diversity, equity, inclusion. This industry is not just limited for me to talking about ROI, which is what I'm going to talk about today, but is way beyond. As a gay man, born in Mumbai, studied in Gujarati medium school till my 10th grade, wherein conversation on homosexuality, being queer, was considered as taboo. Here I am talking about it, makes a huge difference. Because when a queer person or anybody who is not considered to be included in a regular conversation becomes part of any of the conversation which is happening, they are able to contribute something unique and different. Many times, the diversity, equity, inclusion conversation, fortunately or unfortunately, focus primarily on gender binary. आपके यहाँ पे कितने women काम कर रहे हैं, है ना? And other diversities are talked about in other diversities itself. I want, and I request humbly to all of you, that till the time you don't name each diversity you are addressing, you will not be able to improve on those numbers. And let's not limit ourselves towards the numbers, but going beyond it. Thank you. Right? So you cannot say that my diversity conversations are about men, women, transgender, and other diversities. Please talk about it specifically to whom you are talking about. For an example, before I come to my presentation, let me share a real example. I was talking to a good friend of mine, Parmish Rani, who used to head the Godrej India Culture Lab at that time. I asked Parmish, who happens to be my friend for many years and one of the leader in LGBT rights conversation in India, also talking about diversity, equity, inclusion from a business perspective. I asked Parmish that why do we need to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion of LGBT community from a policy perspective? He answered very beautifully, and I have learned so much from that one sentence answer. He told me, Ankit, look, I'm sitting here at Godrej 1 in Vikhroli. Me being present here primarily will ensure that there is no discrimination happening in this building per se. But I have factories in Bhagalpur. I have factories all across the country, and some of my operations are outside India. Who will ensure that even a smaller employee, no matter at which role that person is working, will not be feeling discriminated? And if that person is feeling discriminated or being bullied, what are the policies and tools that person has to raise that concern and make an informed decision about it? Till the time you don't talk about that we as a company, listen to this very carefully, till the time if your company HR manuals do not talk about we as a company do not discriminate based on gender, caste, religion, nationality, all of that, along with the sexual orientation, you are not completing the journey. So I hope that after having this conversation here today, when you go back and look at your HR policies, you will specifically talk about sexual orientation along with gender diversity as well. So with this, let me just quickly go through my presentation. I have just a few minutes left. Let's talk about LGBT. How many of you know about what does LGBT stands for? What is L? G? B? T? All right, how many of this LGBT stands for gender identity and how many of them are sexual orientation? Yes? Wonderful, we have one person, great. So, when a baby is born, there are primarily 3 sexes by which a baby is born. Most of us happen to born with a being biological male or biological female. Some of us could be intersex child as well, and there are over 40 conditioning in which intersex child is assigned. So by sex, we could be male, female, or intersex. But it's just about your body. As we grow up, society tells us that you are a boy, you are a girl, you need to act in a certain way. If you are a girl, you need to act in a certain way. You are given certain set of clothes, certain toys to play with. A society is constantly telling us what our gender identity is, right? If we agree or feel comfortable with the gender identity society is telling us around, then we become a cisgender respective person, right? Cisgender male or cisgender female. Like, I was born as male, I also consider myself to be male, and that's why I'm a cisgender male. If you're born as a female, you consider yourself to be a female, then you are a cisgender female. So that is gender. Sex, gender. Then we talk about किसको देख के आपका दिल धड़क धड़क करता है, and that is about sexual orientation. And it is not just about sexual orientation. It's also about with whom you want to spend your whole life with whom you want to find companionship, with whom you find that this is the person with whom I want to spend rest of my life, and what is the gender of that person. That's about sexual orientation. So being gay or being bisexual or being lesbian is about sexual orientation. I'm sure that most of you will in this room would be aware of this, but still I just wanted to make some ground clarity before we go ahead with the conversation ahead. Now, when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion from LGBT perspective, here I'm not going to use the language of, oh, we bichara people have been discriminated, please accept us. I'm not going to talk about with the language of philanthropy or approach to your kinder, gentle, humane heart, which of course it should be. But I'm purely going to talk about from an ROI perspective, that why you as a business, if you are a business who is conscious about making profit, should talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. So here is the World Bank report in 2016, which says that around 1.7% of our GDP, India's GDP, is lost because our companies are not talking about DEI enough. Now, how many of you would like to tap on that losing dollars? If you, then you talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. Why should we talk about diversity, equity? I'll make three primary cases, again from an ROI perspective. The very first one is talking about LGBT can make you good money. Money, 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 I love so much in my tummy, isn't it so? Here, surveys talks about, done in 2018, that around 3.7 trillion per annum are being tapped by companies who are actively talking about LGBT inclusion. So if you are a company primarily focusing towards the consumer segment, you must talk about LGBT inclusion, because we as a queer community also happens to be quite a rich community on most of the parameters. Not all, but yeah, we also hold lot of money, and there is a economical term for it called as pink money, although I don't agree to it because not all gays love pink color, although it's a beautiful color. If you want to tap on this pink money, darling, you must talk about LGBT, because I will come to you if you accept me. If you don't, then I'll better go to a company which talks about LGBT inclusion on their face value, at least. Second, innovation by talking about LGBT inclusion helps you get good talent and retain talent. Here is another example, a good friend of mine, a gay couple, who happens to, at that time, used to work for Godrej again. And they are telling that they really find comfortable working for a company which actively talks about LGBT inclusion, wherein I would like to work as a gay man in a company where I can bring my complete self. I do not need to hide what I am. I do not need to shy away from my identity, because it is one thing to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion in a boardroom making a policy, and it's another thing to translate those policy on the floor. अगर आपको देखना है ना कि आपका DEI कितना सक्सेसफुल है, आप ये प्रेजेंटेशन बहुत बना सकते हो फ्रेंड्स, लेकिन go and listen to the conversation which are happening on lunch tables. Go and hear the conversation which are happening at sutta breaks. Over there, just the way a straight man can talk about his wife or his girlfriend, can I talk about my partner as well? Just the way you would be talking about your children, I don't have children right now, but can I talk about that I also plan to adopt a baby kid one day and would love to have a brighter future for her someday. If I am given those opportunities, not opportunity, that space without being laughed upon, then your diversity, equity, inclusion conversations are really coming to on ground. 3 is that it helps you good marketing as well. Here are 3 examples during the 377 judgment. I'll give you one example. 2 years ago actually, before COVID, 2018 June month, Pride month, Indigo had issued their in-flight magazine dedicated towards the queer community. Now this is that they did the research that how many times the photo of in-flight magazine were clicked and put it on Instagram. We all travel by flight, we look at the magazine, we'll just glance of some of us who are regular traveler. If we know that we are traveling on a date which are like in the first week of a month, we'll touch on it. Otherwise, we'll not even touch those magazines. So they found that compared to last 3 years in-flight magazine, the number of clicks, photographs being taken of that magazine, put it on Instagram, were 10% higher than the previous all issues. Why? Because they had dedicated one issue towards LGBT conversation itself. They invited queer artists to represent their art, put it on their cover page, and the issue was dedicated towards the queer conversations. So, queer community holds quite a lot of money called pink money. That's why you should talk about LGBT inclusion. B, it helps you get talent, retain talent. That's why you should talk about LGBT. C, it helps you good marketing. That's why you should talk about LGBT. Okay, there's some issue. Anyway, it's fine. So the next slide primarily talks about how people's acceptance towards LGBT conversation or towards homosexuality globally is rising. And I want you all to put an attention towards the India numbers as well. That acceptance of homosexuality in India is on the rise. So if you as a company want to tap and be in line with what global conversation is happening and what Indian conversations are happening, then also you must talk about acceptance of LGBT community in your business conversations, practices, and beyond. Yeah, can you just do the next slide, please? How do we talk about it in our company? Primarily 3-way, equal opportunity policy. Please check, do you have equal opportunity policy in place or not? Let me just share one example. This is one finance company I'll not name. I have been doing capacity building of them on D&I conversation for last 5 years, okay? This guy calls me up that, Ankit, we want to hire this particular person primarily from LGBT community, but we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to advertise it as an LGBT job. I'm like, why? Why you don't want to talk about it from an LGBT job perspective? I said, no, that will be a little challenge, no? Then it looks like we are doing discrimination. Well, if you want to hire a queer talent, then you need to talk about queer talent. I'm not saying that you can say that this job or this posting is only reserved for queer community, which is again unfair, but say that we highly encourage people from diverse background, especially from an LGBT background, to apply for this post. If you do not have a courage to even talk about that in your hiring processes and communications, then how can you talk about diversity, equity, inclusion? Second is same-sex partnership benefit. Why I added this is let's understand one thing, friends. And here I want to congratulate all of you as a business community. LGBT conversation in India is of course led by an activist like me. LGBT conversation in India is of course led by so many civil society organizations and NGOs in the courts and outside the courts. But LGBT conversation in India, or can I use the word LGBT rights in India, has also been led by so many business organizations who found the courage to talk about LGBT inclusion way before IPC 377 was still existing. I can give a name like Godrej, I can give a name like Tata's, I can give a name like Mahindra's. And I'm deliberately not taking the names of multinational companies, right? Because many times we feel that these conversations are coming from Western countries and multinational companies have this agenda to talk about it. And that's why over 100-year-old Desi company can talk about LGBT inclusion actively without shying away from it on their regular public conversation way before 377 was decriminalized in India. And that's why I have a lot of hope from all of you that where society will be going tomorrow, maybe you can go today. Next slide, please. So yeah, I mean, being queer is about breaking the stereotype, having a difficult conversations and going beyond it. Next slide, please. Now, all of you may not be on the decision-making table. How many of you are in management right now, right? Many of you could be just an employee. Then you can ask me, Ankit, tell me what do I do? And whenever I do capacity building on diversity, equity, inclusion in companies, employees ask me this question, okay, Ankit, I hear that it's good ROI to make conversations on LGBT inclusion and all that, but what do I do at my capacity? And the answer to that question is very simple, friends. Look, we all hold some amount of influence in our life. Use that influence to make a positive change. It doesn't matter if you have 100 followers on Instagram. It doesn't matter that how many people will listen to you. It doesn't matter what are the conversations are happening in your family WhatsApp group. If you find that people are talking against or not so appropriate towards LGBT community or any cause you believe in, please try go there and educate them. Here is a small example. My email sign, and I have added my preferred gender pronouns next to my name. Now what happens? I might be talking to so many people. This email must be going to other people. What is this gender pronouns thing? Why has Ankit has written his he, him, uske baju mein, right? That's the hyperlink. Next slide, please. If somebody, by mistake, happens to click on it, it leads them towards this blog which talks about why talking about preferred gender pronouns is a good practice in business. That way, we all can bring a change. Use your area of influence to influence others. Next slide, please. So let me end by saying that diversity may be about number, but inclusion is about culture. And this image represents diversity can be measured on your Excel sheets, but inclusion maybe not so, because inclusion is directly linked with the culture, and culture can be felt, can be appreciated, can be connected beyond our spreadsheets.